Hi everyone, and welcome to today's lesson where we will be learning about the distributive property. In this lesson, you will use the distributive property to simplify expressions. So let's first talk about what the distributive property says. The distributive property tells us how to multiply over either an addition or a subtraction problem. Notice the distributive property says that if you multiply A by the quantity B plus C, that is the same as multiplying A times B and multiplying A times C and then adding the two together. Hence the name distributive property. You are distributing the A to the B and you're distributing the A to the C as well. So let's show how this works with numbers. When we look at this problem, we've done a problem like this before with the order of operations, and we know that according to order of operations, you should perform operations in parentheses first. So if we follow the order of operations, we would have 4 multiplied by 5, and we know that 4 times 5 is 20. However, the distributive property is telling me that it is okay to multiply first and then add those answers together. So if I were to use the distributive property, I could multiply 4 by 3 and 4 by 2. So 4 multiplied by 3 is 12. 4 multiplied by 2 is 8. And then I should add those answers together. And 12 plus 8 is 20. Notice that I did this problem two different ways and I got the same answer. So it really doesn't matter which method I use. So if that's the case, then why do we really need the distributive property? Well, if you look at a problem that has variables, sometimes you cannot combine terms because they are not like terms. For example, in the problem simplify 3 times the quantity x plus 8, you really can't add x and 8 together because they're not like terms. So there would be no way to simplify this without the distributive property. The distributive property says instead of doing the operations in parentheses first, I can multiply the 3 with both the x and the 8 and simply put the plus sign back in the middle. So I'm going to take 3 times x, I'm going to take 3 times 8, and I'm going to add those together. So 3 times x is 3x plus 3 times 8, which is 24. This is my simplified answer to the problem. Remember, I cannot combine the 3x and the 24 because they're not like terms. Let's do one more example together. Negative 4 gets multiplied by 2m, and negative 4 gets multiplied by 3. Notice this is technically a negative 3. So when I distribute negative 4 multiplied by 2m, what I have is negative 8m. Then I'm going to subtract negative 4 times 3. So if I subtract negative 4 times 3, then I have positive 12. Remember, that's like multiplying a negative times a negative, which makes a positive. Again, these are not like terms. So the final answer is negative 8m plus 12. We can also apply the distributive property of problems that have a fraction in them. We can multiply 2/3 times negative 6x and 2/3 times negative 4. So to make sure I do that correctly, let's write this out. I'm going to multiply 2/3 times negative 6 over 1. If I reduce those, 3 goes into 3 once and 3 goes into 6 twice, making that a negative 2. And I now have negative 4 divided by 1, which is negative 4. So 2/3 times negative 6x is negative 4x. Minus, and now we take 2/3 times 4 over 1. which leaves my answer to be 8/3. And this would be my final answer in that problem. Notice in distributive property, the number that is being distributed does not have to be in front of the problem. It can also be behind the problem. In this case, you will first multiply negative 5 with 6f minus 2, and you will multiply negative 5 with negative 2. So negative 5 times positive 6f is negative 30f. Then we take negative 5 and multiply it by negative 2, which is positive 10. And my final answer is negative 30f plus 10. So now I'd like you to try these two distributive property problems and put them in your notes and bring them with you to class tomorrow. So at this point, you might want to pause the video for a moment and work these problems out. Okay, now that you've hopefully had some time to work those problems, let's look at some more distributive property. Distributive property can also be applied to a division problem. If B plus C is divided by A, that's exactly the same as saying B is divided by A and C is divided by A, and then those are added together. So in our next example, notice that 4h plus 12 is divided by 6. We could rewrite this problem as 4h over 6 and 12 over 6 with a plus sign in the middle. From there, we simply reduce each of our fractions. So 4 over 6 can be reduced to 2 over 3, which is 2/3 h. 12 divided by 6 is 2. So the answer is 2/3 h plus 2. In our next example, 9x minus 15 is divided by negative 3. So again, we're going to separate each part of the numerator and make it 9x over negative 3 minus 15 over negative 3. 9 divided by negative 3 is negative 3. Notice here we have a minus sign and a negative sign on the bottom. Those two will combine to make a plus sign, and 15 divided by 3 is 5. Negative 3x plus 5 is the simplified answer to 9x minus 15 over negative 3. So again, I'd like you to try these next two problems, and what I'd like you to do is then bring them to class with you, and we will go over those together. Once you've done those two problems, you are finished with today's lesson, and I will see you in class. Thank you.